On today's episode, contracts, all things legal, like NDA clients. Have you ever had a client request that you would sign an NDA? We talk about revisions and how to avoid endless unpaid revision cycles. Also, how Paige could have saved her client $100,000 if he would have hired her, and what to do about last-minute add-ons from clients. What's up, friend? Hey, I'm Ryan Coral from Studio Sherpas, and this is the Grow Your Video Business podcast, where I talk about how to grow your video business without burning out. We cover things like how to get paid what you're worth, how to be more productive without sacrificing creativity, how to work with the right clients, and a whole lot more. If this sounds like you, then you are in the right place, and I'm very happy that you are. Also, I want you to know that I am very proud of you, because most people would have stopped listening by now because stuff like contracts seems super boring. Most people are, when they reach out to me, they're like, hey, just tell me how to get more clients. And while that's very, very important in the work that we do, can you handle more clients? Like, what if you had an influx of, 10 new clients this week? Would you have all of the things in order in your business to where you'd be able to service all of them, give them what they need, get contracts signed, get schedules set, do all of the things? Because having a lot more clients isn't necessarily what you need. So there's other important things. So congratulations to you for being serious about your business and trying to understand areas where you might need some growth in. And maybe you're doing some of the things that we're going to be talking about with Paige today, all around legal stuff. But there's probably, there were some pretty major takeaways that I had from this episode. Not that should be a surprise, like, ooh, wow, Ryan learned something because he knows all the things. That's not true. And I'm very grateful that I got this time with Paige. And anyway, pat yourself on the back for saying, I want to take my video business seriously. If you're just getting started in this work, sometimes you're like, oh, a handshake with somebody that wants to hire me for video. That's fine. That's good enough. I want to be that kind of person. And I think there's a time and place for the handshake stuff. Like, yeah, I'll do this job, whatever. But I think that's pretty short-lived when you actually want to get serious and try to make a living or try to have a really healthy supplemental income. Thinking and taking some action around legal stuff like contracts is really, really important. So anyway, super glad you're here. Let's grab a word from our sponsor, and then we'll jump into this episode with Paige. If there was one thing that could have ended my business 17 years ago, it would be because of the numbers. I hate accounting, taxes, W-9s, W-2s, W-40s, spreadsheets, all of that stuff. And I hate it mostly because I'm afraid of it. I'm just not great with numbers. If this sounds familiar, or if you're so new in your business that it's not even on your radar yet, you need Core Group. Core Group can help you create financial systems and tax strategies that you need so you can grow profitably, and they've been doing this for over 20 years. They become an extension of your team so that you can stay in your lane of expertise and then lean on them to help guide you along the way. For me, having a team of experts in my corner to help keep track of our books and just to make sure that we're budgeting for taxes appropriately, to have an actual strategy for our taxes and our accounting is priceless. And it allows me to sleep easier at night knowing that I don't have to be an expert in that arena. If you want to avoid surprises in your video business and you want experienced help building a plan for the future that you want, both professionally and personally, head over to studiosherpas.com/core for more information. And when you're ready to set up a free consult with them, make sure to mention Studio Sherpas for a special discount too. Got your back. Get more out of your accountant. Go to studiosherpas.com/core. What is up, friends? Hey, welcome to this episode. Today, my guest is Paige Hulse, who is an attorney and entrepreneur based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. After practicing as a contract and business litigator, she formed her law firm in 2017, where she practices trademark law and advises entrepreneurs and startups, as well as the Creative Law Shop, which she'll talk about as well. So, Paige, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I'm really excited to be here.
Now, will you say that? Do you say that just because like that's what you're supposed to say when you're on a podcast, or are you actually excited to be here today?
I actually am, because you're actually really ezy to talk to, and I appreciate that. You're not a judge, so I get to talk to somebody that's not a judge about law. That's a good thing.
There you go. Well, like I feel like if there's only one thing that we're supposed to do today, it's this. I feel like you have something to start us off with.
Yeah, no matter what we talk about today, everything that I'm talking about is for general educational purposes. If you have any specific questions that arise after listening to this, I would just tell people to go ask an attorney in your state. And thank you for the reminder, because I was going to forget.
That's awesome. So how did you, when you got into law, did you figure that you wanted to work with creatives? Because creatives, I mean, they're not the easiest in the world to work with.
No, never. And I didn't put this in anything I've told you beforehand. What I actually went to law school for, I wanted to practice international law. I wanted to be like Secretary of State or something casual like that.
Yeah.
In law school, based here in Oklahoma, I stumbled into the field of oil and gas. I was actually an oil and gas litigator.
Okay.
And what drew me into that industry was most oil and gas operators, especially here, are entrepreneurs. Literally businesses that just are bootstrapped from the ground up. And so in a weird way, without realizing that I was just drawn to that entrepreneurial spirit. I also come from a family of entrepreneurs, so I was just raised around it. So I practiced as an oil and gas litigator for a couple years. And to make a long story short, it was very stressful. I was in court all the time talking about things like just, pump jacks and just boring stuff. Boring stuff.
I
know long
what that
contracts.
Means,
yeah.
Sounds amazing.
Very boring stuff. To counteract some of the stress that it was just stressful to be in court all the time. Mm-hmm. To counteract some of that stress, I just fell into calligraphy. It became something I would do in the evenings just to relax, honestly. And that calligraphy turned into kind of I guess you would say a side hustle on accident. Mm-hmm. A lot of my friends were getting married at the same time. And so to make a long story short, I accidentally ended up with a little creative side business. And then I realized that everyone I was meeting through my creative side business had absolutely no contracts. No, it was just like that was terrifying to me at first. Mm-hmm. Anyways, one thing led to another, and I decided what I loved about the oil and gas industry, being entrepreneurship, I had that same fire in me, and I wanted to work with other people who are willing to risk it all and bootstrap it and build businesses from the ground up. So here we are.
So what today, what does that work look like with creatives?
It's grown significantly. When I started, it was mostly contracts. Mm-hmm. Now I've gotten into a point where I would actually say creative entrepreneurs make up about 50 to 70% on any given quarter of my client base. I work with a lot of startups that have actually branched into, or they've grown into becoming more mid-sized businesses at this point. Mm-hmm. So I still do a lot of contract law, but I also do a lot of more advanced transactional work like mergers and acquisitions, help people buy and sell businesses a lot, especially in the creative world, and a lot of trademark law. So trademark law has been something that I've absolutely loved doing. And that's the fun area of law, because that's one of the few times you get to work with a lawyer for something happy.
Yeah. That's good. Well, I would love to know is there can you share a most ridiculous, one of the most ridiculous, cases or just things that you've been a part of that actually have involved, ideally videographer, related something or other?
Mm-hmm. Can. I have quite a few.
No.
And I'm like trying to edit it down in my mind so it's not obvious who I'm talking about. Videographers run into some you all run into some funny issues.
She's like, his name was Brian Crowell.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was, and especially not to just talk about 2020, but especially with all of the fallout of of that. Videographers were some of the most ridiculous cases I encountered. I recently had to help one client of mine get out of, again, without divulging too much information. She had filmed, I think it was like a 3-day wedding event, I guess you would call it. And months and months and months of the couple saying they love the video, but they wanted to add this and this. And it was an Indian wedding, and they were angry that she had actually filmed any of the ceremonial dances and things like that. It's just what ends up happening, I find, with videography in particular, is people on the back end think that they have a good spot of negotiation. In terms of just, they think that they can create a lot of loopholes in what they thought the finished product was going to be. Maybe you got them at an unflattering angle, and therefore they deserve a full refund, something like that.
Oh man.
So that's one of the wilder ones. I've gotten to help a couple of clients recently book some celebrity weddings, which has been really fun. That makes it a little bit more exciting.
One of the worst experiences I've had to hire a lawyer a handful of times for very specific things, but probably a decade ago, we had she was a wedding photographer, and she was kind of a friend, like sort of in this network of all the other wedding people that I was really good friends with. We filmed her wedding, and I wasn't actually there, so unfortunately, I'm just kind of, my guys are telling me what happened, and they didn't tell me anything happened. We sent them the video, and they loved it. It was the best thing ever. And then like a month or 2 months later, or something like this, I get this like really nasty email from the groom, and then the bride calls me and was kind of nice, but like I don't know what was going on. Anyway, long story short, like we didn't get enough of her walking down the aisle with her dad. And not, mind you, that was like obviously a big part of the day and whatever, but the video, there's hours and hours of footage and coverage and all this stuff. After all of the back and forth, she's like, well, I've talked to, other photographer friends and other people, and everybody agrees that you should fully refund me. I'm like, it is like thousands of dollars that, they invested. And I'm like, because we got the shot barely, but like, seriously? Exactly. Just like the most ridiculous thing ever. So we ended up having to settle for like, we didn't give her all the money back, but we had to pay a significant amounts just to like, end the whole thing. It was so annoying.
That's exactly right. Even if you're completely in the right, a lot of times, if somebody wants to be, I mean, I'm just going to use the word unethical like that.
Yeah.
They can put you in a position where it just becomes a leverage of how much do you want to pay to get out of it.
Right. Right.
There are ways to avoid that, obviously, but unfortunately, your story, I mean, that's one of the most common ways that I end up working with videographers. And I hate that. I absolutely hate that. And it's just because it's so subjective.
I know. So we've, and since then we've revised our contract a number of times to help every time there's a little thing we're like, ooh, and our contract's like, I feel like it's like a mile long today, which is so annoying. We added errors and omissions to our, I think it's our liability insurance. Mm-hmm. Is in a case like that, is that something that would have helped us not have to pay that or anything, or?
That would depend on the actual policy of the insurance, or like the actual language within the insurance policy. So that'd be something, if we were actually like meeting, I would ask you to send over to look at, because the answer is not right away. Yes. And honestly, the unfortunate truth of the matter is sometimes there's just no way. Sometimes I can put provisions in contracts and also get lucky with what ends up being an opposing counsel on the other side who doesn't really understand the nuances of videography itself.
Yeah.
And in the cease and desist phase or in the demand letter phase, we're able to squash the argument. Honestly, two things that I tell every videographer I talk to. One, if it's, especially with a case like that, if you have a dispute resolution clause that mandates mediation or arbitration before you go to court, that is your golden ticket. Because what will probably happen in this, every single time that I've worked with anybody with a dispute resolution clause in their contract, and the other party still takes the matter to court, it will make the judge furious, especially right now because courts are overloaded because they all shut down for COVID. So they're all still trying to make up time. So when you trot a contract into court that has a dispute resolution clause, the judge will just ream the other side, and I have to say it's a little bit satisfying to watch. It's like, oh, sorry, Your Honor, we did the right thing. We tried to.
So that's a really good tip or whatever, but is like, what else should we be doing or thinking about in those kinds of situations? Because I know that is like, that for me has always been a thing, because it happened so long ago. I'm always like, man, like what? Because it is so subjective. Like they can be like, well, you didn't, get this shot, or we try to do so much homework. Like now we ask the bride and groom, like, hey, what are your must-have shots? Or even a corporate client, like if they're flying us out somewhere and it's like this, there's only one opportunity to like get this, like what are your must-have shots? And so we're at least going in with a game plan versus, well, we think we know what the most important shots are, so we're going to get them based on like what we know and assume versus like, okay, like if dad and you walking down, like that's okay, we're going to make sure that we get that with 8 angles and, like PTSD. Exactly.
Yeah, I know it's like hard to even talk about. Yeah. So anytime I'm talking to videographers, or anytime I'm looking through somebody's contract that is a videographer specifically, I'm looking to make sure, and most people that I encounter do have this, but have language in there that talks about revisions and language that talks about like numbers of revisions and just all the parameters around that, as well as a shot list is probably the wrong verbiage, but something along the lines of a shot list. But when I'm on the defense side, so if I was representing you in that case, those provisions, as important as they are, that's like shiny object syndrome. They're really about 6 others that I'm looking for that I would be able to fall back on if we were to get a demand letter, for example. So, for example, I tell people to make sure that they have, videographers in particular, make sure that you are really detailed in your cancellation, termination, and any provision that talks about money. Make sure that it is spelled out perfectly because, for example, like in the case that I was talking about earlier, they had a provision in their termination agreement or in their termination section that was option to cure. It's the legal phrasing of that. So what that literally means is if one party thinks the other party's breached the contract, the party who thinks that they've been harmed has to tell, in this case, the videographer that they think the videographer did something wrong. And that videographer has, usually we write it in to be 20 or 30 days to cure that harm. So a lot of people will just sign the contract, not read the whole thing, come back, ask for a full refund because of X, Y, or Z, and they've overlooked that provision. And so if they've hired a lawyer on the other side, that's where I'm usually able to have just a like lawyer to lawyer conversation and be like, hey, do you really want to make the judge angry by going into court and talking about this? Because we have records of all of the emails. And you guys didn't comply with that. And that usually can halt the argument pretty early in the process, I would say. But so my point being, again, make sure that you have those important ones like revisions and shot lists, creative licensing, those types of provisions. But know that a contract, my videography contract that I write is actually one of the longer ones that I have because it's just, those are the building blocks of it, of course, but it's just a web. Every provision works off of the other. So it needs to be detailed.
When you mention like revisions, you said revisions and all that's entailed with that. Like what else have you, like when you say that, what do you mean?
So I had a videography client who The couple, I start to laugh when I tell these stories, and I shouldn't. It's just the arguments are so stupid sometimes.
It was me.
Yeah, no, I had a client who had a couple come back. I believe it was a year and a half after the wedding, and say that they actually, upon further review, were not satisfied with the. So they said, and
with their marriage or the video,
with the video, probably,
or their lives.
There's always something that precipitates that type of behavior. So who knows? But they said, according to the contract, we're entitled to one round of revisions, and in this case,
oh my goodness,
yeah, in this case, I want to be clear, I had not written this videography agreement.
Yes, absolutely, of course.
But the videographer had just said the client is entitled to one round of revisions. They didn't say one round of revisions within X amount of days or weeks or months or whatever that is. They didn't say anything about, for example, could the couple come back, and if it's an hour long, well, you probably wouldn't have an hour long video, but if it's a 30-minute video, could the couple ask you to revise 25 minutes of that and that be considered reasonable? Probably not. So things like that. Just think about when you're sitting in the chair and you're about to have to revise the wedding film, all of those parameters that you would be asking yourself all of a sudden in that position. So it's not enough to just say you're entitled to one round of revisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. That's really helpful. I feel like, a good exercise would be like for me to pull up our contract right now and just for you to go through it line by line and kind of look for.
No big deal.
So, related to that, is that something that you typically would do, like for a studio like ours, for us to just, because we've done this. I mean, we've got this contract that started 15 years ago probably, and it's taken on many different forms, and I feel like every lawyer is so good at like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they didn't put this in there, and I didn't, so it always gets changed. So we probably have spent thousands of dollars over the past 15 years on revising this thing. But is that like a standard service that you provide? So
right now it's not, for a couple of reasons. Reason number one being, and this is something that I get asked a lot, attorneys actually, unless I'm licensed, I only work with people in the state that I'm licensed in, which right now is Oklahoma. Some states allow attorneys to revise contracts across state lines. Some don't. Every state has different rules. So it's not something that I offer right now. And this is the entire impetus behind why I have the creative law shop, because I also, if I'm not legally allowed to help, I have friends out of state that I would just want to help no matter what. I can't ethically, legally, like I could lose my license if I did so. Yeah. So the creative law shop is where I've taken all of those contracts that I've written for one-on-one clients, literally just redacted their names and put them right in the shop. And the other thing too, speaking of revisions, no matter, any good lawyer should be humble enough to know that it's funny what you can find when you come back a year, 2 years later and reread a contract. And also circumstances can change as well. The biggest example being COVID. So I started adding in, after a few fun days in court after COVID-related breach of contract claims, I tweaked language in every single contract that I have in the shop. And we provide lifetime updates, so people can just go download the contract with new language. So I can get into what those changes were, but that was one of the few times that we've had like a novel case law arose that we needed to be able to respond to as lawyers. So
somebody like us, we're based in Michigan. Would it make sense for me to go to if I didn't have a contract, to go to the creative law shop, get a standard corporate commercial videography contract, and then at that point, like, take it to a Michigan-based lawyer and say, hey, take a look at this and tweak it for our state?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. And the other reason also is that I understand, keep in mind, I'm a business owner as well. So I understand that running a business is expensive. And you shouldn't just be, when you're bootstrapping a business, just like I was going back to earlier, you can't be paying a lawyer. You should, but you don't always have the thousands of dollars to throw at a lawyer. And there are ways to work smarter, not harder in that instance. So the contracts that I have in the shop take about 10 to 18 hours a piece to write. If you were paying me hourly to write that, it would get expensive really, really quickly.
Yeah.
So the goal is for this to be a starting point where you can, instead of paying a lawyer for 15 hours of their time, take it to them, have them read it in a half hour and tweak whatever they need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. I feel like that's a part where a lot of people don't think to do. They're like, oh yeah, I got this, I downloaded it from wherever and like good to go here. And it's like, every state has different stuff, and it might cost a little bit more than what you downloaded off of LegalZoom or whatever, but it's going to be worth it in the long run. It's
scary, and it's also scary how fast I can spot those when I have any time I have a dispute come through the door, especially in, I keep referencing 2020, and I don't mean to, but especially in 2020 when I had, I spoke to every single client I had ever worked with in the month of March and April, 2020, just because obviously the world shut down and everyone was a wedding industry professional and everyone's business was affected at the same time. And to make a long story short with that, I could spot right off the bat when somebody had pulled a contract from online. And I would just say, hey, just settle the case, because you don't really have a leg to stand on.
Oh, geez.
And it sounds heartless, but at the end of the day, any good lawyer is going to tell you, save your money where you can.
Yeah.
It's not the fun conversation, not the conversation that we want to have, but.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's good. Well, I want to talk about, you're talking about celebrities earlier, and we've had to sign NDAs before with clients, and in our standard contract, what we have is we share the rights of the footage, and that's for a couple of different reasons. One, we want to be able to post stuff that we really like online. We also would like to be able to sell or repurpose some of that footage at times for like stock footage websites. So doing the shared rights, and then, a lot of times we'll get clients that come back, say, hey, we had our lawyer look at this, or, hey, we don't want anybody to ever see this footage, so please sign this NDA. So talk a little bit about what does that, look like for you guys, and, what you might suggest in those situations.
Definitely. A couple things immediately come to mind. First of all, it's completely fine. We shouldn't balk at a client asking us to sign an NDA, as if I'm a videographer as well. Videographers should not balk at somebody asking you to sign an NDA. That's just, honestly, in a way, it's a good thing for your business, because of there's probably notoriety with whomever is asking you to sign one. At the same time, just like you already hit on, we are business owners, and that inability to be able to not repurpose the content, but to use it in any marketing material, advertising, social media, all of the PR that comes from, or the ROI, I should say, of that PR that comes from those types of events, that's a big negotiation factor. So if you are asked to sign one, again, don't balk at it, but have a price. There's a fee. There should be a fee paid for signing an NDA, because at the end of the day, again, you're losing out on, and I don't need to explain that to you, but you're losing out on a financial, at some point, you're probably losing out on a financial gain that you could have had. The second thing that arises, and especially if we're talking about more, like, I guess you would say A-list celebrities, that I just had this happen last week. The business manager, I guess you would call them the business manager for the celebrity was or for the celebrities that were getting married, was reaching out on behalf of the couple to each of the wedding professionals that they were going to hire. And the business manager wanted to be the person to sign the contract on behalf of the couple getting married, just to take care of all the paperwork for them.
Yeah, sure.
So again, from a business sense, that makes total sense. From a legal sense, that is a gigantic red flag. And not that they are intentionally doing anything wrong, but what happens in those instances is whoever signs the contract is your client. So in that instance, the business manager is technically your client, not the couple getting married. Again, that's from a very strict legal sense. But where it gets hairy is that according to U.S. law, and I know this is a little bit boring, but it's important. According to U.S. law, there's what we call third-party beneficiaries. So the wedding is literally only happening because two people are getting married. So even if they aren't the ones that sign the contract, They're the only people, they're third parties to the two parties that have signed the contract. They are the only people that the contract is benefiting, that the event is benefiting. So according to U.S. law, if they wanted to sue you for something, they would have a right to. They would have a breach of contract claim against you. In that instance, the business manager would as well. So what happens when people let the wrong person sign any contract is they literally open up two different doors. Instead of just having one door for breach of contract action to arise from, they open up two different doors and could have, I've seen it get nasty sometimes, but usually we're talking like mother of the bride and bride type situations, but you have to do what the client asks you to do. And if they tell you, if one client tells you in your instance, which this is a stupid example, but if one client said, we want the groom's reaction, we don't want footage of the bride and the father walking down the aisle. And then obviously the bride wanted that. If you had let somebody else, like the mother of the bride or something in that instant, sign the contract, they could still both be angry at you for the same thing, but just have, she could be mad that you actually got some of the footage and the bride be mad that you didn't get enough of it. And they could both come after you for breach of contract at the exact same time. We don't want that. We don't want that.
Well, yeah, okay. I've been in that sort of situation before. Never where we got in trouble, but we actually had different family members calling us and like, oh, throw the footage away. Give us all the footage. Like, and we're like, wait, what is happening right now? So in the instance where you've got a bride and a groom who are getting married, but let's say like mom and dad of the bride are paying for the video, and they're signing.
That's their own deal. That's their problem.
That's their own deal. So you're just saying like the bride and groom should be the people signing that contract.
Yeah. With like no question.
With no question.
And it's not an easy conversation. And that's why I referenced it as it pertained to the celebrity wedding in particular, because I get it. Like I completely get it. And I completely understand in my client's case also, this was going to be, I actually don't even know when the wedding is because the NDA was pretty strict. And I didn't actually read this one time. But in this case, I guess this celebrity couple they're such high celebrity status that they did not want any word about when they were getting married to come out. They didn't want to deal with any of the paperwork. They just wanted to show up for the wedding. So, I mean, again, I get that. And it's, in that instance, it's, you just have to kind of massage the conversation, because it's not you asking the bride and the groom to sign the contract isn't bad. It's not you being mean to anybody. It's not bad. It's not something that should result in a fight. Right. Sometimes we just have to gently educate our clients as to how things are supposed to go.
So in those situations, because we've been in those situations too, where it's like, no, bride and groom, they don't want to, or even the client, whatever. You're still suggesting to kind of push and say, no, this is who needs to sign it. Like they are the client, and it doesn't matter who's paying for it or whatever. But these are the people that need to sign it.
What I told my client verbatim in that instance, because they were pushing pretty hard, and again, this was a big celebrity client. And so what I told her was, if you are willing to roll the dice, first of all, there should be an upcharge for that because we're talking about literal dice that you're rolling. But if you're willing to roll the dice and you're willing to have those two open doors of liability where two parties can come back and sue you, do it. I mean, if it's like, I don't know, think of like the most famous person you can think of. If you're shooting the it wedding of the year, and it's going to be all over magazines and everything anyways. And so you will end up getting PR from that in some way, shape, or form. Maybe those are dice that you're willing to roll. And in that case, just make sure that you have a really, really strong limitation of liability provision in the contract that limits how much they can sue you for. So, and I mean, that's just I'm
getting stressed out right now.
That's where, I mean, every entrepreneur, you start your business because there's that little bit of a rebel in you where you're like willing to roll the dice. and you're willing to make educated risks or calculated risks at times. But we just want to make them educated.
Yes. I like that. You said something earlier that I disagree with. You're talking about signing the NDA and charging for something like that because you're losing out on something else. And for a long time, I had this mindset of like, oh yeah, we're not going to be able to use, post their video online and use that for marketing. And so, there's a cost to that. And this is a conversation that I feel like is probably, has been happening forever. It's still going on. Today, we don't charge because of missed opportunity on we can't show this off. Especially like early on, like when you don't have much to show, like there's that feeling of like everything, like you want to show everything. Like and if you can't show this, then what do you have? So I've made this decision, but not only based on like us already having a bunch of great stuff to be able to share. So my suggestion or my recommendation to people is don't necessarily charge more because you're not going to be able to market because like that, I don't know, like
see what you're getting
the people can kind of say like, well, what do you mean? Like you're going to use like, what am I, a piece of meat to you? Are you just going to like throw me out there? But you can, your own justification, my justification could be the PETA. Is it PETA? Pain in the fee. When you work with celebrities or people that have, well, and I shouldn't even say like there's just a generalization here, but there is a potential when they have handlers and all these business manager and people that are doing all the things for them. There's a chance that there's just going to be drama. It's going to be way more time and energy that you're going to spend with this particular client, and your time needs to be accounted for there.
I think that's right.
Their expectation is that you are a total pro. They could hire anybody in the world. They're going to hire you. And so for you to value your own expertise and what you're able to provide is worth more than what you would charge the person down the street.
I think I'm going to sound like a lawyer right now, because I know that I said you should charge for it. I think that more people in the wedding industry should hear what you just said, because that's a smart way to run it. Like that's a good business brain. And I'm not just trying to like ruffle. I'm not trying to just compliment you here, but
you ruffled some feathers, so thank you.
No, but people do need to hear that more. And I will stand by the statement that, when you're in the first couple years of running your business, it's the same way. If you're making $100,000 a year, $10,000 is literally percentage-wise more important than if you're making $1 million a year, $10,000 hits differently. So early on when you're using that to really bolster, when you're really relying on that type of PR to bolster your business, I think that's a different scenario. I think in your type of scenario, though, you hit the nail on the head in terms of you should be running your business. You should be running your business in a way that above everything else, you are a professional. And a lot of people need to hear that.
I thank you. That was nice. I had a really good friend who was a coordinator, and there was a particular client that she said, hey, they want to use you guys, but you got to sign an NDA. And this was, I think, along that same period of time in my own life where I was like kind of offended that they weren't going to let me use their footage. And she's like, Ryan, she kind of like grabbed me and shook me. She's like, do you know who these people's friends are?
Yeah.
Do you know who will be at the wedding? Do you know that people like this can't just hire anybody they want? Or I'm sorry, people like this can't just hire anybody. They have to hire people that they can trust at a much deeper level, because you're going to be in their home and nobody goes to their home except for these kinds of people. And so there is just a much deeper. So if you're hanging out with these kind of people and you want to get hired by these kind of people, just assume that you're going to. And so because of that, we've booked jobs that's
incredible,
really high end, really expensive. People have spent a lot of money with us And we've never, those videos have never seen the light of day. And so what
That's
I
incredible.
realized, like hindsight, I'm like, oh my gosh, to my friend, like, thank you so much for shaking me and making me realize that if I had this video to show online, people might be impressed and like, wow, like, oh, wow, cool, they shot that wedding. But the type of people that were going to book me because of me showing that online aren't the client that I was actually after.
They didn't just like stumble upon you on Instagram. I completely get that. And the other side of it also, again, to like join your side of the argument here. People like that can hire anybody that they want. First, it's very obvious when a wedding professional or a videographer, I guess specifically in this instance, gets overexcited and wants to overcharge because they want to. It's obvious when someone wants to capitalize on a situation, right? And people like that, where it doesn't, they can probably afford anything, but they want to work with people that they enjoy. Like they want to work with people that are going to make their lives a little bit easier because it's high stress anyways. And that is just the most important thing to remember above all else. I was talking to a client of mine who shot a celebrity wedding that it'll actually be on TV. She shot it a couple weeks ago.
Oh.
And we were talking about that and just the kind of stuff that, like you brought up, just dealing, not the bride and the groom were great.
Yeah.
But dealing with the other people.
Everybody else.
Everyone else that's there. That's because it's going to be a televised event. We're manufacturing behind the scenes drama, which was something to be completely transparent. I was like, I hadn't even really thought about that so much. That makes total sense. If it's a reality show, they're going to find something to be dramatic about. But just kind of being a professional, like commanding that respect for yourself, but at the same time, go with the flow and be easy to get along with. And sometimes you just have to smile and nod a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. I shared this at an event I was at last week. An email that I'd gotten from one of our high profile clients. It was the mother of the groom, and we've filmed all of their kids' weddings and their cousins' weddings, and the email was like, you've filmed all of my son's wedding, like you have been with us the last decade. We're so grateful. And she called me a friend, right, in this email, and we charged them a lot of money to do this work. Not, we didn't say like, oh, well, we know who it is and we know they can afford it and whatever. It's like, this is how we value this service and working with these people. And this is what we're going to do. And we're going to knock it out of the park. And at the end of the day, like, they paid all this money and they're like, thank you. We trust you. We love you. You're our friend. It's about building that relationship rapport. None of the videos that we've done with them have ever made it online. And that is okay, because here I am at this wedding with these people, and somebody at the wedding was like, "You're going to shoot my daughter's wedding," and I was like, "I absolutely will. Here's my number, and it's going to be at this winery in some place far away." I'm like, "That sounds amazing."
I think that is at least a definition of success. That is when you have what more people need to be aspiring to be in that position. It's not just about going viral online. It's about doing a good job behind the scenes. And actually, I get that. Something that I was thinking of that arose, and this is something also that plays into just being your client's biggest advocate, especially in those types of scenarios. But something that arose in the wedding that I was speaking of just a couple weeks ago was because this is going to be a televised event, which sounds like it's a bit of a different scenario than what you had been talking about. The reason why my client and I were talking was because the network had reached out to her with a release, essentially just a copyright release, so that they could use her work in commercials and on the TV show, et cetera, et cetera. And there was a provision in there that actually conflicted with a provision in the client agreement that the bride and the groom signed, and nobody had caught it. And it had to do with commercial use of the images. In this case, it was a photographer. So it had to deal with commercial use of the images. And so because we were able to flag that, we were able to notify the couple, and she was able to work all of this out behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, do you think they really trusted her after that in terms of this was someone who is so professional that she was able to, she knew exactly what was in her contract. She knew exactly what she had asked them to sign. She knew exactly why she'd asked them to sign those things. And she knew when it accidentally conflicted with something else that they had signed and maybe didn't read fully. So it's always one of the most important things that somebody could do. I think the most important takeaway that somebody could take just in terms of like turning up the professionalism in your business is make sure that you understand everything. Even if it's the most dense, boring contract in the world, make sure that if you paid a lawyer to write it for you, have them sit down and explain it to you so that you can explain it and know exactly what you're asking your clients to sign and why it's there.
Yeah, that's good. I have one last. My favorite part about having a podcast is I just get all this like free consulting that you would probably normally charge me hundreds of dollars an hour. But this is great.
At least you're honest like, about it.
This is your responsibility to answer all of my questions here. So we have ongoing clients. By the way, thank you for sharing all of this free advice with me. This episode is never going to see the light of day. So it's just like you signed an NDA.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have, this is a current conversation. Last week we were talking about this and we're like, we need to kind of figure out how to do this, at least from a billing angle. But over the years, we've had ongoing clients who just hire us, we'll do a big job for them. So they sign a contract and then, we do another big job and they sign another contract. And so it's like every project has this deliverable, has this contract. And then in the middle of a project, they send us an email. Hey, can you also go shoot this thing over here next week? And we're like, sure. Yeah, for sure. And then so we create an invoice, not a contract. We create an invoice for that thing, send it to them, then we go shoot the thing, and then we deliver the thing, and it's great because these clients love us, and it's just like it's run and gun. They know we're super flexible, we're available. They don't have time probably to get it to legal, and so we just make it happen. What is the best practice there? Like, would it be? At least for these clients, we wouldn't just do this for anybody. Like if it was a new client and they were like, "Hey," we'd be like, we're still hoping that you paid the second half, or the remaining of this first contract that we started. But these other ones, they've paid us tons and tons of money, so there's a ton of trust there. But I still know that there's probably like maybe something that we should have in place that would serve as like, these emails could be legally binding or something like that. Help me.
Yeah. So,
for free.
All right. Well, again, at least you're honest about it. I respect that. So you never want to be, first of all, the way that I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you have a merger provision in your contract. You don't need to answer that.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Yeah,
but
always.
In that case, then you've set yourself up in a position where those emails cannot be collected and become a contract. Like you've negated that ability to have that argument. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay.
So I can't use the emails?
Correct. Because
I knew that too.
Yeah. So in that instance, of course, the lawyer in me is like, I don't like those scenarios. I also though think of my job. I usually am working on a specific project for somebody and then something unexpected will pop up at the same time. It happens all the time. It happened today even. And so then it's like, okay, well, you don't want to be in that awkward position where you're sending somebody a new client agreement every single time they have another spin-off project to do.
Yep.
So again, I'll just use myself as an example here. The way that I write my client agreements is I'll lay out the scope of the services that I'm providing, but I'm also contemplating that those types of events can happen. And I list out the services again, which you would have as well in videography, and then have an end date. So like an end, so you can have language in there built in that states that basically the project can expand or shrink. It's going to fluctuate. You wouldn't phrase it like that, but that's the gist of it. But no matter what, the contract terminates at the conclusion of the wedding date or event date, whatever that may be. You know what other industry that this happens frequently in is the floral industry.
Okay. Because
people will set their budget. They'll freak out about how expensive flowers are anyways. So they'll set their budget, and then they'll get closer to the wedding and they think, screw the budget. I want all the flowers I can get. So this is how I have to write every single one of my floral agreements as well. Just contemplating that the scope of the project can grow, and saying that building in to have an exhibit A or an attachment A, whatever you want to call it, that is a document that you all can amend. And the contract states that. And just add a description of, if they email you up and say, hey, we want to have you shoot this one spin-off project, you can just amend that exhibit A or whatever you want to call it, send it back to them for a quick signature. It could literally be a paragraph. It doesn't have to be re-signing the entire agreement. And then that makes my little lawyer heart just a little bit happier because I don't like anyone doing anything without a contract. So that's the best way of handling it, in my opinion, from both balancing both the legality and the business perspective.
Well, and the nice thing today is, like, we can just send them a link.
Exactly.
We use Dubsado for our contracts and stuff. So it's like literally they're clicking on a thing and they can just hit the button, which actually begs another question. We talked about bride and groom signing a contract but like, we're working with a business and I'm working with the creative director at said business, not the business owner or whoever the LLC is, whoever's on there. Like, what are we up against there?
Okay. So obviously I'm real excited to answer this question. This is actually
heart's palpitating.
This is one of my weirdest client experiences with a videographer. Ironically, my videography client in this case had signed it was a commercial contract, like what you're talking about, and they were going to shoot a series of footage over a couple years span. And the person that signed the contract on behalf of the business turned out to be an employee that did not have authority to sign the contract on behalf of the business. That employee gets fired, and then the company, and this was going to be a huge reoccurring stream of revenue, which is what every entrepreneur in a client-based industry wants, right? Like, that's the golden nugget.
For sure.
So it really disrupted my client's business, obviously. And to make a long story short, if he had had a provision in the contract in his representations and warranties provision, if he had had one sentence that said both parties agree or both parties represent and warrant that they have the authority to sign this agreement, he would have been able to hold on to that contract. It's literally one sentence. And so that's an example of where some of these provisions, like, they sound so boring. They are boring. They sound so just like they seem longer than they should be, but it's because instances like that. I mean, that was literally $100,000 mistake. That sentence was $100,000 mistake. So making sure that you have that in your representation, make sure that you have representations and warranties section, and then make sure that that sentence is in there. The other thing that I see happen quite a bit, which is a very avoidable mistake, make sure that you're signing the contract correctly, like sign on behalf of your business. So don't sign personally. Don't just sign as your name. Sign as your name, owner, name of your videography studio. When typically working in the wedding industry, I'm on the defense side of any litigation, right? But I don't have that many clients that are trying to sue the bride and groom for something. Every now and then for missing payments or something like that, but not really. Typically, it's the defense side. And the easiest way for me to get my clients out of a lawsuit is if the other party, if it's a business to business lawsuit, is if the other party did not sign on behalf of the business, or if they named my client individually. That just requires me to walk into court and say, Judge, they sued this person individually, but it's actually the LLC that entered into the agreement. And the judge, I mean, that is
Paige drops the mic and walks away.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a 5-minute court case. No, but really, that's one of the easiest ways one of the most frequently occurring mistakes, and also one of the easiest ones to avoid.
Yeah. Wow.
So
that's brilliant. Thank you for that. That's really helpful. So in the creative law shop that you have, you would have a contract like this that's kind of already built. It has the representation and warranties. It has all the other merger line things.
Doing a good job.
That somebody like me could take it to my lawyer and say like, okay, make this for us for Michigan.
Yep, exactly. Every contract that's in the shop, again, I wrote for a one-on-one client because I also know at the end of the day, and this is something more lawyers need to recognize, I can write a beautiful contract, just a work of art. But at the end of the day, I also can't say with complete certainty that I understand every nuance of what the business side that goes into. I don't know what type of camera you're supposed to show up with on the wedding day and how, I don't know all of those nuances. So I work with an industry professional to build these contracts so that it's actually something that's suitable to the professional.
Relevant and all that. Yeah, I love
exactly.
that. That's great. Well, Paige, this has been really insightful, man. And I saved so much money by having you on the show. Free consulting
I was
plus
about
things.
To say any time, but maybe not.
I'm going to save $100,000 because I'm going to add in this representation and warranties line. I actually have no idea. I'm like, maybe we have that, maybe we don't. But anyway, this is super helpful. I know a lot of people are going to be really, really grateful that we had you on. How can people find out more about the Creative Law Shop and follow you online? Where do you hang out?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach my law firm at paigehulse.com. I got super creative and named my law firm Paige Hulse Law. So, and it's on Instagram, it's just paige.hulse as well. The Creative Law Shop is shopcreativelaw.com. And we have our own Instagram page for that as well. So we have, and everything that I've talked about here today also, I've written articles about all of this on the shop's website. That's where everything that I share about contracts is on the shop's website. So if anyone has any follow-up questions or just something they're wondering after listening to this, just look through the blog because I can almost guarantee, but I'm a lawyer, so I can't actually guarantee. You'll find what you're looking for.
I can almost guarantee.
I can come real close, but not quite.
That's amazing. That sounds like an awesome resource. Well, thank you very much. How would you like to leave us today?
I would like to leave you with we'll get your affiliate code set up, but if anybody wants to use your code, if you go to shopcreativelaw.com, they'll automatically get 10% off of anything in the shop that they want to get.
Sweet.
So
yeah, we'll share that for sure.
Absolutely.
Awesome, Paige. Thank you so much for that. And again, thank you for your time today. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Ryan.
Hey, don't forget to check out the show notes for any of the links or the things that we referenced on this episode. And I would love to hear from you. If you are watching this on YouTube or Facebook, leave me a comment. Let me know what was awesome or what wasn't. What are you going to do different? Are you going to apply any of this stuff that you learned from Paige today? Do you have contracts? Are you kind of like I'm not sure I'm ready for them? Did we convince you of anything? Leave a comment, let us know. You could also jump into our Facebook community if you haven't already. Go to studiosherpas.com/community. You can get inside of that group. There's incredible filmmakers, videographers in there that are serious about growing their business. There's a lot of people that have just started their video business, and there are some seasoned veterans in there. So a great, well-rounded group, incredible individuals, and you don't have to do this work alone. That is just something that I want you to hear, that you don't have to feel alone. And I know so much in this business, in this work, as an entrepreneur and a business owner, it can feel like you're the only one who's experienced the things that you're experiencing, or you just feel like you're on an island, and that's a really lonely place to be, and you don't need to be there. You don't need to figure out how to do all of this growing and business stuff by yourself. So go get inside of the community at studiosherpas.com/community. We also are on Instagram. You can follow us at Grow Your Video Business, and I'm at Ryan Coral, so you can go look at the cool stuff that we're posting. A lot of stuff from the podcast and other events and free workshops and that kind of stuff. So go go follow us and comment, link, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Just kidding. Reach out if you need anything. I'm Ryan at studiosherpas.com and would love to just figure out how I can help you in your video business journey. I appreciate you, my friend. If you like this show and you want to give us a rating, you can do that on the iTunes store or wherever, or Spotify, wherever. I would appreciate that. I love reading that kind of stuff. And if you feel like you know somebody that could benefit from this episode or just the show in general, please share it with them. I love that. I would love that. They would love that. I don't know. Would they love that? Okay, that's it for me. Thanks for tuning into this episode. I will see you on the next one next week. Bye for now.